Whenever we don't have a right triangle, we can also use cosine to continue to solve for triangles. So we call this law of cosines. We have a triangle ABC. This is going to work for a side angle side or a side 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 type scenario where we maybe know all three sides and we need to find some angles, or we know two of the sides and we also know the angle between them, and we're going to use that to solve maybe for an opposite side and continue to work our way through. Now, this will be an important step in solving for a triangle, getting to all the sides and angles. But once you use this once, you don't have to stick with it. Law of sines, triangles having angles that add to 180, those are other things that you can definitely use that may make the process a little bit easier. But this is just mainly going to focus on getting us started with law of cosines so we can continue to solve. So our one format of law of cosines is a squared equals b squared plus c squared, which kind of looks a lot like Pythagorean theorem, minus 2bc cosine a. Now, a few things to note. The side opposite the angle here, so a and capital A for the angle, are the two we'd be working with. This scenario is going to give us what side A would be. Now, normally when you see law of cosines, they list out three different versions, but it's more important here is if you can just remember the parts and not so much stick to letters A, B, and C. So this is going to be opposite the angle A. B and C in this case are the two adjacent sides. We have those there, and then we'll use them again in the format. So this is a side angle side type scenario that we're going to look at. Then what we can do is we can subtract b squared plus c squared from both sides, subtract it over. We could then divide by negative 2bc, clean it up, and we come up with this version that is going to allow us to solve for an angle. And in this case, this is like a side angle side option. Things to note here still, A and A are opposite of each other, so when you know the angle, these are the adjacent sides, you're subtracting the opposite side. All things we're going to do as we go through and solve these. So here we are. Let's solve for x, and this is a side angle side type scenario. So we're going to go x squared equals 25 squared plus 20 squared minus 2 times 25 times 20 cosine of 108. Now, things to notice here. Doesn't matter which order you write 25 and 20 here either. We're going to follow order of operations. 25 squared is 625. 20 squared is 400. We are then going to multiply what becomes 1,000 cosine 108. Now, I said order of operations, and what we're not going to do here is we're not going to do 625 plus 400 minus 1,000 because we have to finish multiplication. And this is an important step that students sometimes forget. We have to multiply that out first because that's not 1,000, that's 1,000 times cosine of 108. So if I do that, it comes out to be negative 309 approximately. So this becomes 625 plus 400 minus a negative 309. And pay attention if that's negative or positive. Well, I know the front part's 1,025. Then it's going to be a plus a 309, because subtracting a negative. And we now get to 1,334 is equal to x squared, which is our opposite side. Last step there is you have to take the square root. And we get about 36.5 as this opposite side. Now, from there, we could then use law of sines. Using law of sines, you could then find each of these angles, and you would have solved the triangle. But right now, it's really focusing on law of cosines, and at least getting to that point. Next problem, we know all the sides. We need to find an angle. So we're going to use the other version of a law of cosines. So this is where we take cosine of A is equal to b squared plus c squared minus a squared over 2bc. We're paying attention to the angle we're solving for and the side opposite to it. The side opposite to it is a. So that's the one we're going to subtract. So cosine of a is equal to the two adjacent ones, 24 and 16, are both squared, minus a 35 squared over 2 times 24 times 16. So getting things in the right place there are important for this formula. So we got 24 squared plus a 16 squared minus a 35 squared comes out to be a negative 393. Then 24 times 16 times 2 is 768. So we have cosine of A equals that value. Now it's a little bit different than the cosine we've dealt with before, because when we were dealing with right triangles, we usually had cosine be a positive value, but it showed up as a negative here, and then this value that we're having here, it's going to be a negative as well. And this is the idea of whenever we have cosine being an obtuse angle, it's going to give us a negative value. We're going to look more into that definitely later, but for right now, I'm going to go cosine inverse of negative 393 over 768 gives me the measure of angle A. So we're going to go to our calculator, cosine inverse, negative 393 over 768, and that comes out to be about 120.8 degrees, which is what we wanted right there. All right, let's do a couple more. So first one, it's a side angle side. So we're going to go x squared equals 17 squared plus 13 squared minus 2 times 17 times 13, and then cosine 34. So 17 squared is 289, and 13 squared is 169. And we're going to subtract 17 times 13 times 2, which is 442 cosine 34. Now, 289 and 169 I can combine. That gives me 458. Then I'm going to do 442 cosine of 34, and I get minus 366.4. So 458 minus 366.4 gives me about 91.6 for x squared. I now take the square root of that, and I get that it is approximately 9.6 units. Next problem to the right, this is a side, side, side scenario. So we're going to go cosine of x is equal to adjacent side, minus opposite side, all squared, over 2 times the product of the adjacent sides. So we go 16 squared plus 26 squared minus 21 squared gives me 491. Then 2 times 16 times 26 gives me 832. So we're now going to do cosine inverse of 491 over 832 gives us angle x. And that comes out that x is approximately 53.8 degrees. Next problem is going to be like the one just above it. We're going to go x squared equals 30 squared plus 23 squared minus 2 times 30 times 23 cosine 52. Ran out of space again. So we got a x squared equals 900, that's 30 squared, and 529 minus 23 times 30 times 2, which is 1,380, cosine 52. Now I'm going to put the 900 and the 529 together, so that's 1429. Then it's minus 1,380 times cosine of 52, which comes out to be about negative 849.6. We subtract that, and that comes out to be about 579.4. Now with the square root, we get a value that is approximately 24.1 as our side. Hopefully you're following along, checking the calculations as we go through these. Last one is solving for an angle, so cosine of x is equal to, we're going to go adjacent side squared minus, or plus adjacent side squared minus opposite side squared over 2 times the product of the adjacent sides. 47 squared plus 38 squared minus 25 squared gives us 3,028. 47 times 38 times 2 gives us 3,572. And that's equal to cosine x. So now we're going to do cosine inverse of that to give us x, and we get approximately 32 degrees.